Hello everyone, my name is Joy Miller and welcome to an evening with bullshit. Tonight we will be discussing the war on drugs. Currently the US spends over $40 million a year on the war on drugs. With that being said, many argue that that's not enough, that there are still thousands of broken homes, jobless, and homeless. On the other hand, many say that we can use America's addiction to drugs to better the economy. Some say job creation, some maybe not. Political candidate Hillary Clinton says that America has to confront its appetites for the use of drugs. Some say a way to do this is legalizing marijuana, and doing so helping the US economy and job creation. On the other hand, many people argue that legalizing marijuana will not help the economy. In fact, it will hinder it. Tonight we have a panel of 5 judges. We have here Ron from Dads for Reagan. We have Ellie, a doctor from Columbia. We have Senator Joe Slye, the Republican representative of Wisconsin. We have Buzz, a weed store owner. And we have John Matthews, a DEA. Welcome. So to jump in right away, 14 people admit to using marijuana in the last month, many saying marijuana is their drug of choice. 17% of kids admit to using drugs by 8th grade. 45% of graduating seniors admit to using drugs weekly. Studies have shown that the potency in marijuana is half as strong as it was in the 70s. And because of the technology, the access to drugs is easier and cheaper than ever. Senator Joe Slye, would you say government, how would the government pay for enforcement if certain drugs were legalized? What would the limitations and regulations be? And how will it affect the American people?
Joy, that's a great question, and it's a question that's very important, but I want to focus on a broader question, and that's how would this affect our children? How would this affect our children? I think the representative from Dads for Reagan would agree with me in saying that we need to see the effects this would have, the scourge of drugs, the addictiveness, the corrupting power that they have. I have children myself, and I don't want my children to live in a world ruled by drugs and addiction. In 1982, Ronald Reagan, a great American patriot, declared a war on drugs that is being carried out to this day, and that is a very important battle that we have been fighting for years and must continue to fight so that we can protect a better future for our children.
Thank you. John Matthews, what do you have to say?
You speak a lot about children, but how does that make sense when we are sending a mixed message to children if we then legalize marijuana? We tell kids constantly to stay away from drugs. Legalizing one drug, though, just sends a mixed message. All drugs are bad for you kids, but this one drug is fine. How do you explain that to your children and then lead them down the right road?
That is a great question. We should not be legalizing marijuana. It is illegal on the federal level, and states legalizing it is what you're talking about, sending a mixed message.
But I want to get back to how would we pay for it if it was legalized? Let's say somehow it was legalized. Who's paying for it? Who's paying for the enforcements, the regulations, the limitations? Where's that money coming from?
I'm afraid it's very hard to do it through a tax. Like you said, marijuana keeps getting cheaper and cheaper, and therefore it's not a guarantee that enough money could be made from selling the drug to provide for enforcement. And most often, probably the illegal drug would become even cheaper than the legalized one, and therefore you're back to the same issue all over again.
Buzz, what do you have to say? Being from Colorado, where it is legal, how has it affected your business, or how will it affect your business?
Actually, being from Colorado, there's a 2% decrease in everyone in the teenagers that use marijuana. That's a proven fact, or done through survey. Back to what you were saying about this war on drugs and what Reagan did. Reagan, he had a war on drugs, but what started the war on drugs was the budget cutting, was him stopping the funding to inner city, after school programs. This increased crime, this increased drug usage, this increased drug selling and anything that does with drugs. So it wasn't necessarily a war on drugs, because the war on drugs, it promoted a lot of crookedness throughout cops, all this kind of stuff. So drug dealers profit from criminalization. So legalize all drugs, period.
That's a good segue into our next question. Many people are for the legalization of marijuana for pharmaceutical use. Often we see marijuana used for the THC, which is often proven help in pain relief. Often doctors that live in states that do not allow medicinal marijuana use the medicine called Marinol, which has THC in it. Ellie, would legalizing drugs help or hinder the pharmaceutical industry? Also, looking beyond marijuana, what are the health benefits of legalizing other drugs? Or are drugs simply flat out just bad and we should not even consider the legalization?
All right, well, that is a really good question. And I would say that if you legalize drugs specifically for medicinal use, it would definitely help the industries because these drugs can work for many people for different problems, and it can fix common issues that many people have. And so less money will be put towards researching other drugs that may not work when we have drugs already that we know work, but they're not legalized medicinally. So the money can be put towards that instead of making it better. And you can also use these drugs to improve existing drugs and kind of boost the economy with that. So the good outweighs the bad, and there are many health benefits along with that, such as with marijuana, it can stop or dramatically reduce seizures and cure those suffering from nausea. There are studies found that 80% of people that suffer from nausea have it cured with marijuana.
Would you say, though, that it is worth it because smoking marijuana has four times more tobacco? Would that be worth it with the issues that come with smoking tobacco, like lung cancer, emphysema? Is it worth it?
Well, I have not heard that. I don't think.
All right. Ron, what's a follow-up for that?
Well, it's definitely not worth it. I think that drugs should never be used in any way at all. I've had many stories of people smoking marijuana being extremely high to where they do not even pay attention to their children and then have dead babies on their hands.
Buzz, what do
So-
you have to rebuttal
is
for that?
extreme.
8 people are killed a year from shark attacks, and not one recorded death in history has been caused by marijuana usage, period.
But there is no point to use marijuana. The drug exists in its pure form. It can be actually sold as a drug. There is no other drug that is smoked. It doesn't exist. Most things are taken in pill form, and it can be regulated that way, and it's safer.
Crack cocaine is smoked, methamphetamine is smoked, heroin is smoked.
These are not legal.
I'm talking about
pharmaceutical
drugs. I'm
drugs.
talking about drugs that have a medical
You can
reason
smoke
to be
Oxycontin. You can melt it and you can smoke it, or you can inject it.
That's not how it's prescribed by doctors, though.
You can still
medical
use it.
uses.
Oxycontin is getting cut by the FDA, and people are resorting back to heroin. So which problem would you rather have on your hands?
Legalize the better drugs for medicinal use so that it's better for you than those other kinds of drugs.
The U.S. Army uses morphine. Morphine is just as addictive as heroin. The only difference between it at a molecular level is vinegar.
And marijuana has not been proven to have any addictive effects from it either.
Legalizing drugs for medicinal purposes is just a gateway to getting them legalized for recreational purposes.
Some states already are, and it would be better to just have it legalized for medicinal than recreational as it is. And it's coming up in the world.
So $31 million a year goes to the war on drugs, and only 1/3 of that goes on to treatment. Where do we see this changing if any drug was legalized? Where would that money be going? Would it go up? Would it go down? Would we get rid of it? Would we need to do treatment since it's a choice? And what do we do with the broken homes that are left because of drug use? Because if it is used recreationally and not for medicinal reasons.
The best treatment for these problems would be to get rid of the problem, to get rid of drugs, get rid of the addiction. Dealing with it after the fact is not going to solve the problem.
I think that the drugs, like marijuana, and just as an example, can be used to improve already existing drugs, so you wouldn't actually be taking just the pure medicinal part of marijuana. You would be improving other ones with it, and that could help too.
Caffeine is just as addictive as any other drug. So is alcohol.
All right, unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut us off there. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I am Joy, and this has been an evening with bullshit. Before we go, I'm just going to reintroduce myself. I'm Francesca, and I was the moderator for this project.
I was Devin. I was the anti-drug interest group.
I'm Kylie, and I was the doctor.
I'm Nehemiah, and I was Joe Sly, a senator.
I was Randy, and I was Buzz Lightyear.
And I'm Mitchell, and I was playing a DEA agent.